Welcome to the BBC's News at 6 o'clock. The government has been harshly condemned by some of Britain's most eminent scientists after they were refused permission for research into cloning. Ministers have put off making the decision until they consider the rights and wrongs of using cloned human embryos. Scientists say the decision is immoral as the research could save lives. More details now from our science correspondent, Fergus Walsh.
In theory, cloning offers the chance to triumph over disease. Scientists think human embryos could one day be manipulated to grow into virtually any part of the body: bone marrow, brain cells, skin or organs for transplant. The DNA or genetic code from an adult human cell would be injected into an embryo. The resulting cloned tissue could be used as a human repair kit. But the government has banned research, saying it needs more evidence of the potential benefits.
As far as the dangers are concerned, we're not aware of any specific dangers, but when cells are grown out of the body, you have to be absolutely sure that they develop in a normal way, that they don't age abnormally, and so it's things of that sort that we would be looking at in our scientific review.
But the UK's best-known fertility expert, himself a Labour peer, said the government's ban was pathetic and would delay research into finding cures for diseases like Parkinson's and cancer.
I think inevitably it will hold up the potential of treatments for fatal diseases, particularly treatments for leukemia and treatments for some trauma such as burns. I think there is a risk that by delaying this research, people in this country will die unnecessarily. So in my view, this is an immoral decision.
Scientists stress they don't want to produce human clones, but to use human embryos under 14 days old. Anti-abortion groups say any such research is wrong.
If they'd gone ahead today, they would have been green-lighting, saying yes to sick patients deliberately constructing tiny twin and triplet replicas of themselves. And then those tiny twin and triplet replicas would have been killed to provide tissue for transplantation. That's the reality.
It'll now be at least 6 months before ministers decide whether embryo cloning experiments should be allowed. There's widespread public suspicion about research involving anything to do with cloning and ignorance about its potential benefits in combating disease. The government's stalling on this issue because in the wake of the row over GM foods, it wants solid public support before it gives the go-ahead to cloning techniques. Fergus Walsh, BBC News, at the Department of Health.
A former British soldier has been charged they could transmit the human form of the illness.
There was no warning of the new advice. Most opticians first heard the news through television and the papers. Many were annoyed they weren't told earlier.
I think it would have been nice to have had a little more warning about what was to be said, because naturally we want to reassure the public and our members about the steps that have to be taken. I mean, I think it's very important the public understand the risk here is minute.
Customers were confused by a message that the risk's so small it's theoretical.
One day they say something, the next day they say something else. So you don't really know where you stand with it, you know?
It is confusing, yes, because a lot of things they do it with the beef. They say it's safe to eat and then it's not. The same with the GM food, safe to eat and then it's not. And now contact lenses.
Opticians often reuse contact lenses when fitting patients for a set of their own. No one's ever caught new variant CJD from them, but classical CJD, which affects elderly people, can be passed on through a cornea graft eye operation. So there's a theoretical risk new variant CJD could spread through lenses. Scientists haven't yet been able to prove otherwise.
The contact lenses are liable to come into contact with the cornea. It may be that they will pick up some cells which contain the transmissible agent, and we just haven't got the experimental data to prove that there is no risk.
In the early days of BSE, little was done to stop it spreading to people because there was no evidence it could. That was a wrong assumption, and people are now dying of the disease. Today, scientists are more cautious. If there's a theoretical risk, even if they can't prove it, they act. That's why they're advising against reusing lenses. Margaret Gilmore, BBC News, West London.
The main West Coast rail line isn't